Well, hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us again for this fourth session of our online event, Synchronicity, Mind and Matter. For those who don't know me, I'm James Barbieri, Associate Program Director at the Puri Center, and I'll be your host for today. Today with me, we also have Eleanor Pete, the Program Director of the Puri Center, and Maureen Doolan, who is the co-founder of the Puri Center, who will both assist me and you during this call. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone of a couple of Zoom rules for this call. During the presentation, we ask participants to turn off your microphone just to ensure a better quality audio. If a participant would like to ask a question or make a contribution during the Q&A discussion, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Otherwise, you can physically raise your hand, and if I spot you, you can turn on your microphone. We also invite participants to turn on your video camera, as we believe that seeing everyone's face and reactions creates a nice educational environment. But of course, if you don't feel comfortable doing so, feel free to just keep it off. And finally, all sessions are recorded for archival purposes, and these recordings will be available to you all by sometimes next week, and the same with yesterday's session. And yes, that's it for the rules. We can begin with this session. To start the session, we'll have a reading of a poem by Richard Böhrengarten to create a space that will help us enter the world of synchronicity. And then our presenter, Yuriko Sato, will give her presentation. There'll be about an hour. Then we'll go into breakaway rooms, and then we can move on to Q&A and discussion. Today, we welcome Yuriko Sato, who will give her presentation entitled Synchronicity, a Common Reality in Japan. Yuriko is a Japanese Jungian analyst and psychotherapist. She's also a training supervising analyst at the International School of Analytical Psychology in Zurich, where she teaches on topics such as the Eastern or Japanese psyche, narcissism, and psychiatry. And now, to open this session, we'll share this poem by Richard.
Hello, this is Richard Böhrengarten from Cambridge. This poem is from a book entitled Notness Sonnets. After eternity, a dialogue. First, there was void, and then a soundless bang. Time is an arrow, not a boomerang. Life is a knotted string that time pulls straight, spun out by change and chance into your fate. While swallows gather and the summer dies, love is blinked out like summer's butterflies. Love will play on forever, never trying, never striving or dying, time defying. After eternity, we live out time. The bell strikes, but you cannot hear the chime. We live to praise, to celebrate and treasure infinite presences no clock can measure. The lock is timeless, and the hand is yours to turn the key that opens all time's doors.
Oh, thank you, Richard, for that poem. That was very moving. And yes, now we can pass it over to Yuriko. Welcome. Hello.
Thank you, James. Thank you for your introduction. And Richard isn't here today, but thank you, Richard. And yeah, Maureen and Eleanor, thank you for inviting me. Today's my topic is synchronicity and a common reality in Japan. But when I proposed this, then since then, somehow my idea evolved, and somehow this title might be a bit misleading. It doesn't, doesn't mean synchronicity is very common in Japan or anything like that. My start point is when I came to Switzerland to study Jung psychology. Of course, Jungian community people are fascinated about talking synchronicity. And then I realized, of course, I was fascinated too, but I realized I wasn't so curious about really talking about it. It doesn't mean I'm indifferent to it, but I realized that some kind of temperature difference between me and the Western friends and colleagues. And then it's changed in me, but still I realize for me, synchronicity back then was somehow felt more, still now, but not more natural occurrences, as a natural occurrences, even if they really happen, but they somehow I feel just so, or it happens, that feeling I have. So this is the starting point. Why, when I said natural occurrences, what is natural and what isn't seems to stem out of how one sees the world, or what kind of world one is living. So to think of synchronicity, I want to somehow explore one, somehow, how do I say, worldview which somehow accommodates synchronicity more naturally. And I'm sure there are many cultures and environments, but since I'm Japanese, I want to somehow take Japanese psyche, Japanese culture in as an example today. I want to, maybe I can start, before starting, it's very important. When I say today, I will say very much Eastern and Western and East, West, but I use this word, but of course one cannot so clearly say this is West, this is East. And it's, of course, either geographically, culturally, politically, or even within one individual psyche in this, rapidly globalizing modern time. I don't mean I praise myself just Japanese and opposing to Westerners, or I'm Easterner and you are Westerner. Nothing like that. Of course, both in me. I don't know how to say it, but I have also modern psyche too, modernized Western psyche in me. But just I use this Eastern, Western, East, West, these words today, just show much more, in a way, makes sense, but I hope you get it. So this I start. I want to tell you synchronistic stories of my family. I myself have never had synchronistic memorable events or anything, but my maternal grandfather had two synchronistic events. One was, in Japan, fortune papers in a shrine or in temples are very common practice. You go to temple or shrines, and you can pull this kind of oracle papers. But especially at New Year time, this is really common. Many people go to New Year visit to deities and Buddhas in shrine and temples. So on that occasion, they do. My grandfather was very rational man. So he didn't know why he did that at New Year on that year. But anyway, he did. And on the oracle paper, he saw there was a picture that was sinking ship. And he was a rational man, so he really didn't want to somehow take it too seriously. But at that time, my grandfather was in shipping business. He was borrowing a ship, or I don't know how many ships, but borrowing ships from a much bigger company. So just in case, he called my grandmother, his wife. Then my grandmother said, I had a phone call from your company. One of the ships sunk. So he was, it was really, since then, he never ever did pull this oracle paper anywhere. He was so shocked. This is the one incident. And the other one was he had a job opportunity, either two opportunities. They are really, really equal condition. One was in Kyoto, one was in Hiroshima. Again, he's a very rational one, so he really thought, but really, really he couldn't decide because it's really almost same opportunities. So then he went to a person who can professionally do itching. In Japan, this is still now, you can see expert on itching. And so he went, one of them. And then I don't know what hexagram he got, but this person who did itching, he told my grandfather, if you go to Hiroshima, you'd die. Then, of course, I don't know how much later, but of course, Hiroshima had this atomic bomb. So these two synchronistic events have been really talked many times, and of course, I really somehow thought about it also from childhood. But each time when we talk in the family about this, it's just somehow we share, yeah, it was really mysterious, it must have been, and we share some kind of I don't know if you can say belief, but somehow we thought, thank God especially Hiroshima one, we were really maybe thankful, and we share, must be really something there to really told my grandfather. So in this way, it might not be, I can't say very well, but somehow talking about synchronicity, really in Japan, we could share, oh, really? Okay. So, somehow, not okay, but we could share this feeling that it can happen. It could happen. So this was my personal closer synchronistic events. And the other thing maybe relating to synchronicity is also, okay, just one is this like I Ching, this kind of oracle is also somehow common in Japan. But other thing is, in a way, we talked about dreams rather freely. Also, when my grandmother died at the funeral, my aunt said, oh, I have a dream of her. She came up to my dream, so and so. And then at the funeral, after the funeral, we are eating, and somehow when she talked about this dream, and our relatives really heard this dream, maybe then she came. So in this level, is shared among somehow people in Japan. And also my father was scientist, but he also talked about dream when he was a child. So somehow I don't know, each family might be different, but somehow dreams are very much in our culture. Also, New Year dream is very important. Of course, one can say it's a bit superstitious, but still we are sharing some level of, I don't know if you say belief to invisible world or invisible connection in Japan. Okay, so I just put these stories there. Then I want to begin. I had an interesting Korean documentary talking about the different, how Easterner and the Westerner see the world differently. That documentary starts with a ball, and in the West, somehow this is an object in empty space. But for Easterner, somehow the object is made of, surrounded by kind of energy, and also this is made of energy too. And so this is not on empty space. There's surrounded by certain energy. In a very popular common example would be qi in Chinese thought. So if there are two balls, in a Western mind, this is just two objects in an empty space, and there is no relation. But for the Easterner, they are surrounded by qi, in this case, qi or energy. So through the surrounding energy, these two are related. It's not empty space in two objects. They are related in this state. Then they come interesting connection. Ancient scholars of China realized that tide is the result of interaction between the Earth and the Moon. And 2,100 years ago, they realized also acoustic and magnetism. And so it seems Western mind couldn't get it. And even Galileo was wrong. So I want to pause this at the beginning. Maybe I should go to I share my screen. I want to pause this at the beginning of this talk. Something at work beyond what one sees. It seems Easterner pay attention to this. Orientation, somehow Eastern is oriented to something behind what one sees. And then, Jung wrote, even a superficial acquaintance with Eastern thought is sufficient to show that a fundamental difference divides East and West. The East bases itself upon psychic reality, that is, upon the psyche as the main and unique condition of existence. So if psyche senses or perceives something, it would not be immediately denied or neglected as nonsense or unimportant. Somehow, while our modern psyche tends to do so. So now I move to something at work beyond one sees in Japan. Before Buddhism was introduced to Japan in the 6th century, before Buddhism, there was much older worldview, or one can say an indigenous nature worship, so to speak. And it's nowadays called Shinto. And it's often described as a animistic religion, but it's somehow, people don't think Shinto is religion. It's more maybe very unconsciously, but seep into Japanese psyche, and also much later syncretized with Buddhism. So Shinto is pretty much Japanese way of being and in everyday life. And this Shinto has its roots in prehistoric Japan about 15,000 years ago. And at the end of last glacial period, the world's climate drastically changed. And it seems Japan, at that time, Japan was covered by thick forest. And then this forest really influenced human life. And that time was hunting, fishing, gathering culture flourished. This period is marked Jomon period. And it's interesting, this is a very unique culture. Normally civilization settled, not civilization, maybe the human settled with the starting agriculture, but they are still hunting, gathering, and fishing, but they could settle. That means nature was so prolific and abundant, they had enough food. So in this very potent nature, somehow I think people start to feel the generating force, luminous generating force. That was the root of Shintoism. Of course, there's no name that time, but I think this is such a old root in nature on Japanese archipelago. And also Japan is on the plate tectonics, moving plate tectonics, and then we have a earthquake, volcanic eruption, and also Japan is on the path of typhoons. So in this way, it's not only nature is giving, but nature is always changing dynamically. And so in this dynamic nature, with this living in this dynamic nature, people have to, in a way, negotiate with this luminous force. Somehow thank them, but have to negotiate the order of their world, like very good, like a good season, abundant water, abundant food, or not to somehow, not a disaster. It's more like a order they wanted to. So then they negotiated with this luminous force that was now called, in Shinto deities called kami, but the kami is very difficult to explain. Not only deity in a maybe Christian sense, but this luminous force and generate everything in the nature, but then everything is pregnant with this same force. So kami is force or principle, you can say, but also nature itself somehow. So that was the root of the Shinto. And Japanese Jungian analyst, Jungian psychologist Yama said somehow anything that is animate or inanimate could be possibly be kami if only the person observing it feels a sense of awe. And so there is no argument this is kami or not, this is not kami. I'll show you. Sorry. This is a typical somehow tree, sacred tree. Whoever somehow feels awe, sense of awe or sense of wonder, there is kami there. Kami resides like a magnificent tree or waterfall or rock. Somehow kami is really in the nature from the very beginning of human life in Japanese archipelago. So this is something invisible, something Japanese sense of something beyond one sees. And the concept of maybe this. Sorry. Okay. The Japanese culture is rather well known as its appreciation for nature. But Japanese didn't even have a word of nature until 19th century. And the scholar took great pains finding a word for it. I mean, the Western concept of nature eventually had to be introduced to Japan. Yesterday, Roderick explained this nature in the West is de-animated. So when nature was in this world, concept of the nature was introduced to Japan in 19th century. For Japanese, nature hasn't been de-animated. So that was the difficulty for the translator to make this word nature in Japanese. We had some equivalent words for nature in Japanese. For instance, Kacho Fugetsu. This is a four characters. It's flower, bird, wind, and moon. But it doesn't mean flower, bird, wind, moon. It means beautiful things in nature. Or Sanga Somoku. It's written mountain, river, grass, trees. But it means everything in nature. Or Shinra Bansho. Shinra, the first two characters means many trees go forever, so many trees. And then all phenomena, so all things and phenomena in the universe. Again, it's about nature. So we had those words, but all has emotion and the relation to human psyche. So it's very different Western nowadays notion of nature. And the probably very close one is this Pusis in ancient Greek. And this was from verb fuin, growing and producing. And then Roderick said yesterday, it's really nature was de-animated. this is in ancient Rome, the Latin word natura it changed to fuses to natura, but the classic then introduced classical opposition between nature and culture and so. And nature, and yeah, nature became just an attribute of God somehow the later time. And also difficulty was, as I said, in Shinto, this kami, this numinous force is generating things in nature. So it is principle, and yet also those things in nature. But in our notion, modern notion of the nature is just object. And so while for Japanese, more principle and in a way matters both. So that was a difficulty for Japanese. Okay, I will go very quickly. There's a word for very interesting word in Japanese. It's mottainai. We say in Japanese, people often utter the expression mottainai. For instance, if a beautiful Japanese dress is not worn but kept for years, keep in a drawer, it's expensive. So there's some people just put in a drawer, or it is mottainai. Or if too much from the end of the carrot is cut off and thrown away, it's also mottainai. Or if a healthy young man has no interest in working and just lazes around, this is mottainai too. So in English, it can be said, what a waste, or don't be wasteful. But mottainai means much more than just wasteful. It expresses a sense of concern or regret for whatever is wasted when its intrinsic value is not properly utilized. So in this notion, there is no division between human and nature, or between living beings or inanimate objects. And this word mottainai is a compound word with this, between these two words, mottai and nai. And the nai is a negation. So in this way, mottainai means no mottainai. So what is mottai? Mottai is, at the beginning, original meaning is form or shape of something, an entity or body. Excuse me. But then its meaning evolved, and so mottai start to mean core essence or true nature of an entity. So core essence or true nature of an entity is mottainai. But again, mottai is made of two kanji, these characters, mot and tai. And the mot is again negation, and the tai is entity. So that means core essence or true nature of an entity is no entity, nothing. Sorry. So this is the true nature of, this is in Buddhism, nothing true core essence of something is nothing, is really one of the core teaching of Buddhism. And then something exists depending on many other things. sorry. Something exists depending on many others, and if one of these others changes, another constellation emerges. This is called, with many names, dependent origination, and with other names. It expressed this in this canon. When this is, that is. This arising, that arises. When this is not, that is not. This ceasing, that ceases. And then one other important Japanese concept is mujo, this impermanence. This is very much impregnated in the Japanese worldview. That nothing is constant or permanent. Everything is transient and ceaselessly changing. So mutual and the dependent dependent arising is really the core somehow Japanese worldview. And it is deeply connected to ever-changing and sometimes unpredictable nature in Japan. So this is why the Japanese appreciate cherry blossoms so much. The period of full blossom lasts only for 3-5 days at the climax, then they gone. And the cherry blossom evokes urgent feeling to be there in time and witness their astonishing beauty, while touched by this transient nature and somewhere we feel feeling sad in the middle of blossoming springtime when lives are coming back. Another thing is this word ichigo ichie comes from the tea ceremony. It's called chado or sado. It's not just ceremony. This is one of Japanese culture. This is very philosophical practice in Japan. So host invite, I don't know, depends on the size of the this tea ceremony, but even if the host invite the same person at other time, it's not the same anymore. So it's always when you meet for this time here and now, this is one lifetime, one meeting. This is not only tea ceremony vocabulary, this is very much in Japanese mind. Whatever you do, whoever you meet. So this is in Japanese view. So I really want to focus on this interdependent origination now. As seen in the idea of mottainai, true nature of a thing is nothing. A thing has no self-nature. But what does it mean? This view has central importance in Huayan school of Mahayana Buddhism, and the Japanese philosopher Toshihiko Izutsu explained this very well. I really want to explain what he explained. If you can access to this original article I really recommend. And the second one is only in Japanese. 9 years later, he translated to Japan and he added more expression that really somehow conveyed this Fuan philosophy to the readers. But unfortunately, this is only Japanese. So I largely introduce the idea from his article. It's interesting. He excuses the title of his presentation in this Eranos presentation. At the beginning, he said, this title is the nexus of ontological events, a Buddhist view of reality. But he said, in ordinary phrase, it could be interconnection of all things in the world, or something like that. But he used this title in order to indicate that it is going to be topically concerned with the philosophy of the Huayan school of Mahayana Buddhism. So he chosen this title. So he took this, this is rather, in this article, he took this 4 domains of reality from Chen Quan. He's I think 7th century, this person, Chinese Huayan scholar. And this is the 4 domain he explains. First is domain of the sensible things, in Chinese, Shi. The second is the domain of the absolute metaphysical reality, in Chinese, Li. And the third, domain of the unobstructed interpenetration of Li and Shi. And the fourth is domain of the unobstructed interpenetration of Shi and Shi. The fourth one is the dependent origination. So in more plain word, these 4 domains is the first, world of phenomena, second, world of principle, and the third is world of mutual interpenetration of principle and phenomena, and the fourth, world of mutual interpenetration of phenomena and phenomena. So I want to go one by one. First is world of phenomena. In our empirical world, we experience 2 separate things, A and B. Each has its own characteristic, self-nature, and A and B are clearly distinguished from each other. There is a clear boundary between the two, as A cannot be B by crossing the boundary, or vice versa. So based on that, our phenomenal world can be established. In such a boundary, if such a boundary is removed, our daily lives would fall into chaos. So existence as a whole in this phenomenal world are divided into innumerable numbers of things, and each has its own name and is distinguished from everything else. We are living, feeling safe in such a phenomenal world. It is the world of things. So in this way, this boundary somehow obstructing each other. Those in this level, they cannot be cannot be obstructed each other. This is a world of phenomena. However, the ancient Eastern philosophers knew of viewing the world by removing those boundaries. Izutsu said, this is one of important characteristic of Eastern form of thought. And I would like to relate this to Eastern tendency of trying to see something beyond one sees. So I'll show you, I will show you slowly. This is still has boundary. Oh, sorry. Don't know how to do this. Or maybe I can't. Never mind. Okay. I can go back and forth. If you remove the boundary, you don't see things. Where I just blurred A and B. There was A and B, but if you remove the boundary, you don't see things. There's nothing. This is the emptiness. Izutsu said, sorry, I just go back. Okay, the limitlessly divided world all of a sudden turns into a vast space of no discrimination for an observer. So this is called the world of principle. But in this view, emptiness doesn't mean empty world of no things at all. This emptiness is pregnant of everything. If you take out the boundaries, there is nothing, void, empty space and nothing. But this space is impregnated with everything, all potentials. And this is not easy, I know. I'm talking about it as a Eastern worldview, but it's not the common person's view also in the East, in Japan. But that's why Buddhism has been teaching this mystery which an ordinary mind cannot see. So, excuse me. To see the world of principle is to emphasize, I quote, it is the prerequisite. Emptying consciousness is a precondition for emptying existence. End of quote. So in order to have such emptying of existence, removing boundaries, the same process of emptying existence has to happen on the side of the consciousness of the subject which is viewing it. So in short, it is necessary to empty our ordinary consciousness, our discriminating mind, always wanting to see the differences and boundaries. I want to show the part of the very first chapter of Tao Te Ching. This is a Shantena's translation. This is a famous, so probably you know. Without name, heaven and earth beginning. With name, the myriad beings mother. Therefore, ever without desire, we contemplate its mystery. Ever with desire, we contemplate its boundaries. So now I talked about the world of phenomena, world of principle. I repeat, without name. Name is, as I said, name. A, B has name, boundary. The things has name and boundaries. Without name, heaven and earth beginning. So this is the world of principle. And then with name, the myriad beings mother. So with the name, with the things, the boundaries, myriad things emerge. So this is the world of phenomena. And therefore, ever without desire, we contemplate its mystery. Desire is attachment, and mind sees only this world of principle. So this third line is the world of principle. So without this attachment, without that sticking to just a phenomenal world, we contemplate mystery, the principle. So the world of mystery. I put the dot left because there is a, that it comes later. And for fourth one is the ever with desire, we contemplate boundaries. So with this attachment, desire, there's a boundaries emerge. So the world of phenomena. So we come to the third. It is very important not only removing the boundaries and see the world of principle, but to keep both views at the same time is important. But for us, it's somehow good to examine this reality as phases. So now I would like to talk about moving or starting from the world of principle back into the world of phenomena. So principle manifests itself into phenomena. So emptiness of essentially absolutely no discrimination arises into each and every one of all phenomenal forms. Then this world of phenomena emerges. But in Huayan philosophy, the most important point is that this arising is always the complete manifestation of the principle. So that is everything in the world of phenomena, each and every one of them embodies the whole principle as it is. A small flower in a field or even a single speck of dust floating in the air are the manifestation of the whole principle. So I said the principle manifests into innumerable phenomenal forms, but it doesn't mean the principle is divided into pieces. So each one carries whole principle. So this is what Izuzu said. The principle permeates phenomena without the slightest hindrance and is thus none other than the phenomena themselves. Conversely, phenomena manifest the principle without the least obstruction and are thus none other than the principle itself. The principle and phenomena are tracelessly interfused and mutually interpenetrating. This relationship between principle and phenomena is termed in Huayan philosophy the mutual interpenetration of principle and phenomena. So we explored the first, the world of things or phenomena, and the second, world of principle, and the third, this interpenetration of principle and phenomena. And now we come to the fourth, namely the interpenetration of phenomena and phenomena. Sorry, I omitted the word. Maybe I go back. He emphasized this no slightest hindrance, he said, and no obstruction. This is the difference. In the world of phenomena, always phenomena obstacles each other. But in this level, from the principle to phenomena, phenomena to principle, there's no obstacle. This is important to emphasize. Now come to word of interpenetration of phenomena and phenomena. So here we come back to interdependent origination. So in the world of phenomena, there are separate things, A, B, C, and in the world of principle, there's no discrimination. So they are in the world of principle, they are all no self-nature. So A doesn't have its self-nature, but still A. How is this possible? And Hua Yen answers in two ways. Suppose there are the phenomena A, B, C, and so, and each of them is itself without any self-nature, yet they are all related. The existence of A as A is determined by its relation to B and C and all other phenomena. And everything is related to everything else. Nothing can be considered apart from its relatedness to the wholeness. As anything moves in time or space, all things will change in relationship to it. So, as you see in this diagram, although A is without self-nature, still it is A because of its relationship to everything else. In short, the inner structure of A includes everything else in hidden or powerless form. And by such relationship, A is A, not B or C. So in this way, nothing exists by itself, and the existence of everything is supported by the entire universe. And all things simultaneously manifest themselves as a whole. The philosophy of Hua Yen calls this ontological reality interdependent origination. So Izutsu describes there are only vectors of ontological energy which are constantly flowing and crossing. The principle's manifestation into a thing does not mean a thing suddenly emerges. It means rather innumerable vectors of flowing ontological energies are primarily there, and that forms a nexus of interrelations. So there is no thing, but only relations. Also, he expresses things like ABCD are only temporary knots on such crossing of vectors of this ontological flowing energies. So after all, as everything is related to everything else, and we cannot think of any single thing without taking its relation to the wholeness into account. And this diagram shows only a moment of situation. And even with one new movement, the structure of the whole changes. The entire universe participates in the existence of one single thing. This is the worldview of Hua Yen. And Izutsu shows one other idea to explain this mutual interpenetration of phenomena this way. suppose that there are entities A, B, C, and each differing from the other, but each in turn is constituted by an infinite number of the same ontological elements from A to A, B, C, D, and so on. So even though they are different, so if we use semantic thinking, the signifier is always everything. So in order to explain this enigma, Hua Yan employs the aspect powerful and powerless. And a powerful designates the presence of positive, manifest, self-asserting, and controlling element. The powerless denotes the opposite, passive, seclusive, self-negating, and subservient. So among the infinite elements, one of them, for instance, A or L or X perhaps, becomes powerful, while the rest of them are understand to be powerless. So in this way, A, L, or X, they are recognized in the daily world, this phenomenal world, as different things. So at also any moment, the powerful elements is not necessarily the only one. So it changes in relation to the whole and all the time, over time. Maybe I can relate to more with this signify, so I just leave it this. So Jungian analyst Kawai mentioned that Jung's concept of synchronicity belongs to the thought pattern of this interdependent origination. And I think, of course, synchronicity happens in all areas of our lives. And also maybe yesterday also there was a questions like if synchronicity increases at certain conditions, or just synchronicity is happening all the time and we are sometimes more sensitive and other times are not. But it's, yeah, as I said, the theme of synchronicity is really variable. But it seems psychoanalysts and the therapists experience synchronistic events in working with their clients and patients. And also it seems many synchronistic events are around the matter of life and death, like my grandfather's, especially Hiroshima, the synchronistic event, Ichin, divination, for instance. So I wonder, one witnesses a synchronistic phenomena when there is a urgent or surging manifestation of the principle at points where many vectors of the ontological energy cross. And the observer, or sometimes maybe observers, are at one of those crossing points. And this connection manifests into the world of phenomena. And that connection is perceived as meaningful connection to the observer. So I wonder if life, death, or also intense existential questions in one's life that constellate such a in a way hot spot in the nexus of ontological energy or field. So this is the Hua Yan philosophy, really core teaching of this for the reality, their reality. So beginning, I said I was not so curious about synchronicity compared to my Western friends. And I wonder, it was not because I took it for granted, I said, but I wonder because the range of natural occurrence for Japanese is in a way a bit wider. In other words, synchronicities has a place in the reality for the Japanese. And Japan is one of the so-called developed countries with modern science technology. And yet, it seems the older worldview still has a place in the Japanese psychic reality, even though no matter how unconscious people are. So I want to go into this Japanese psyche relating to this. I hope I have a little more time. Sorry, I forgot. Sorry, I forgot important thing. This Tao Te Ching, I said there is something else. Maybe I can show this up. Here, the third line and fourth line, I added this thing, and this somehow the world of principle, world of phenomena, and then comes yes, the third line talking about the world of principle, but this is talking about also interpenetration of she and li. Coming back to talking about the principle, how li interpenetrating she and she interpenetrating li. And the fourth line is not only talking about world of phenomena, it's really talking about interpenetration of phenomena and phenomena. Sorry, I forgot this to tell. So I'm sorry, I might confuse. So now I want to talk about why Japanese psyche accommodates this more. The Japanese Jungian analyst Kawai proposed this model. Jung pointed out that the East based itself upon psychic reality as the main and unique condition of existence. And this Japanese Jungian Kawai also somehow made this model, and he said the tendency of emphasizing psychic reality seems to have made the Easterner aware of the existence of Jungian notion of the self, And he said, somehow, maybe I should explain from this. This is the consciousness, and for the Westerners or our modern psyche, ego is in the center of consciousness, and this is unconscious, and boundary is very clear. But Japanese somehow consciousness oriented to self, and then self is in a way out of consciousness. This is the center of psyche. So, but when you focus or orient to self, somehow this boundary becomes a bit vague, blurred. But somehow totality is more important, even sacrificing clarity. This is Kawai's model. And the scary thing in this model is even there is no center in the consciousness in the Japanese psyche. There's a many manifestation of this. But I will introduce one amplification of this. Again, same Jungian psychologist Megumi Yama introduced this using somehow to amplify the difference between the Western psyche and the Eastern psyche. This is a panorama of Florence. The picture was painted 1352. And as you see, maybe I show next one later. This is a map of Florence, same city. Carta della Catena, so painted 1419s. When you compare, this later painting has a really single point of view. You know where somehow from where the painter stands. While this painting is in a way confusing. You cannot say where the painter stands. All this different angle. So Yama pointed out somehow Japanese really the psyche really has a more like a multiple viewpoint at the simultaneously in a way, while maybe Westerner, as you remember, ego is always center of the consciousness, somehow standing in a one place and look at the world in that from that one point, viewpoint. So she amplified this, comparing these two paintings. But this somehow also reminds me of what Izutsu says in the Yen worldview. There is no center of the world, or center is everywhere, or even also the whole world is the center. And this sounds familiar. In the West, there is a famous saying, God is an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. So it's not only Eastern view, but it's interesting. The Yama quoted from Romanishin's idea. Probably even in the West, the time between this painting and this painting, somehow the worldview has changed tremendously. It was really new world emerged. It's nearly a little bit more than 100 years between those two paintings. The technique of linear perspective was developed. So this is a shifting time in the West. Sorry, I'm really trying to come to. It's nearly 1 hour, isn't it? Okay, I skip. Sorry. Somehow my point. Okay, this is Jung's quote. It seems as if the Eastern mind were less egocentric, as if its contents were more loosely connected with the subject, and as if greater stress were laid on mental states which include the potentiated ego, underlines mind. So somehow to look at the synchronicity or try to understand what this interdependent origination we need somehow this view, a little bit loosening our standpoint, then depotentiate ego. This word is somehow very strong, but there are many example. It must be very many example. Also, you have. I don't know which one I should introduce. I have to cut it. Yeah, somehow our modern consciousness is too bright, too powerful to see something subtle. A bit like Erich Neumann talk about moon consciousness, and Remo also talk about the eros ego, I think. So there are things one can see only under the moonlight. My friend's daughter, when my friend was small, she could see aura around people. She could see blue aura around her father. And my friend asked her how she could see aura. And she said she should not directly look at him, but she has to a bit look away. Then she sees aura. So this is also one example to look at another reality. Or of course, when we try to think something, we close our eyes. Seeing is a powerful senses, but somehow seeing is too powerful. So when we try to think, we naturally close our eyes to sense it. And of course, we naturally have other senses to really sense this, what we don't see. So, yes, so this is, I'll come to end. The Japanese still keeps this older worldview beside the modern worldview, but this older view doesn't mean expired. And this is just original and archaic. And so it must be in everyone's psyche, not only for the Easterner or just for Buddhist or mystics. So this is the point I wanted to make. And of course, I didn't include so much, but also important thing is really somehow going back to what happened. Sorry, going back to sorry, I didn't make it. This circle. I'm sorry. I was a bit mesmerized. It's very important to go to nature and sensing the world, relating to the nature with all senses, by gazing stars, walking in a meadow. That is, we all connected to touch into this other reality. So thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation. So back to you, James.
Oh, thank you very much, Yuriko, for that. That was a fantastic presentation. You've explored the your Eastern or Japanese worldview, and through the looking at the language and the philosophy, you've sort of showed us how this cultural difference may give us an insight on how to unite mind and matter, and therefore lead us to synchronicity, which at least it seems that your culture, Japanese culture, seems to either be there or very close to being there. So thank you very much for that. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I can see Shantina has joined us. I know he was a bit late, but I wonder if he's got anything to say about about your presentation.
Hello. Yeah, I apologize. I had no internet. So
hello, Shantina.
Hello, Tom. Lovely, lovely. Look, I didn't hear all the presentation, Yuriko, but good chunk, and it's really lovely. One little reflection me about this part of your talk, emphasizing that it takes a, a slightly blurred vision. It's like a soft vision, like a moon vision, to perceive these subtle connections and to perceive synchronicity. I was reminded that the Egyptians said that the gods appear at night, they appear in dreams, and they don't appear during the day. Not because they're not there, but because they're not visible in the strong sunlight. It needs this penumbra to perceive the noumenal dimension of reality.
Interesting. Yeah, it is also, I didn't say, but of course, kami is invisible. And there's a ceremony also, yeah. This invisibility is also important in this notion of this kami. Kami is everywhere, but yeah, you don't see.
You don't see it.
Yeah. And some important, like a festival in Japan, we are there once. They have only once a year, they take this kami from his heart, and I think his shrine to the field of more to entertain this kami. They create like a theater, but they have to bring this kami to this theater, but they do midnight, really surrounding with really this Shinto priest, and also with sound barrier, the very dissonant, very uncomfortable sound, but with sound barrier, they really protect kami. From then they really bring invite this kami to the theater. So it's very interesting.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
We are running a little late. Yuriko, would you prefer going into shorter breakaway rooms, or would you rather go straight into discussion?
So I'm sorry, there's no time for breakout.
No, we can make it 10 minutes, or otherwise we can go straight for a discussion.
I don't know how people think. Well, I'll tell you my question. My question I prepared was, the Japanese retains this old world view. Then how about you? So maybe we can open this question. I don't know, whichever.
Yeah, sure. Let's open it to the floor then. See what others have to say. I can already see Lloyd has his hand up. So come on in.
Yuriko, thank you so much. This has just been, for me, an absolutely fascinating introduction to the Eastern worldview. And I can see very many parallels with Native American worldview from things that I've learned and teachers that I've encountered. And two things that come up to me. One has been addressed a bit in the chat, and that's the difference in language. And a window opened for me, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, in an interview I saw with Brian Swim, the cosmologist. And he said that English has more nouns than any other language known in history. And I've since found that, in fact, 75% of our words in English are nouns. And Erich Fromm said that over the course of the Industrial Revolution, English became more noun-centric, which was a reflection that our culture was becoming more materialistic. And what Swim said was that indigenous languages tend to be verb-centric, which is an understanding that the universe is a process. It's not like the Newtonian worldview that we live in a collection of inert, separate objects that have no intrinsic meaning. And in the chat, Gary's observed that, wondering if it's part of the difference is the Japanese, the written language is pictograms, where in English it's different. But I'm wondering, in your spoken language, does the language tend to be more noun-centric or more verb-centric? And then the one other issue that didn't come up at all, and I know that from Native Americans, that for Native Americans, time does not exist at all as we take it in the West. And in the idea of synchronicity, time is so implicit within that. And you didn't talk about time, the Eastern view of time. So I just wonder if you could comment on those two things, please.
Okay, thank you. The first question is easy one. I think it's clearly, I think, verb oriented, like many other Eastern language, I think, Japanese. I skipped something, but it's also because of this, there is no ego somehow, the centric ego in Japanese psyche. And so also subject itself is somehow soft, or I don't know, blur. I don't say blur. So we talk, even I talk, sometimes even I don't say subject, it still makes sense in the context wise. And also, yeah, this is Japanese is really verb-centric. I don't know, this might be related to that, but for instance, there is already somebody already pointed out in the West, when marrying couple announced their marriage, they said, we will marry, or we decided to marry. But in Japanese couple would say, somehow in a bracket, the situation become that we marry. So becomes that marry. So in this, who decided? Western might ask, but somehow this also taking the notion, yes, we decided, but there is again, like we say, N is a bit like that connection in a Hawaiian notion of this connection. There must be some connection, then we marry. So then it's in this way become that we marry. So this is a language, for instance. And the time, I've never thought about it. Time. Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot answer immediately. I will think about it. It's a very interesting question.
Yes, it is actually. Thank you, Yuriko, for being so honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Even all the physicists are very confused about that.
As well, yeah. Good.
Well, the next question comes from Annette.
Sure. Hi. So thank you so much. This was absolutely lovely. And there's a lot of things that I was thinking about. One, I'll bring up like 3 points, and you can explain it as however you would like. I wondered if matanai had to do with potential, right? Because there's this idea of, in like the waste of, but the potential. So I was curious if that also is similar. I was also curious about, long ago I had heard a word, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, I apologize, but it was like itai, but not the hurt, but the one that was more with horse and rider. And I wondered if that was a similar concept about the oneness, but I don't see it anymore when I look it up, because now Mazda has taken over that anytime you try to look it up. So I was kind of curious. Okay. And the third was this piece about, it feels like the distinction between like the semi-permeableness, or it's like contextual listening versus literal listening. And I really feel that a lot, where people are listening for the precise word in Western culture, and in other cultures or other personality types, we listen softer with more for context. So I was curious about any of those.
Oh, I don't know quite understand this potential thing. Could you please explain a bit potential one? Potential is
When you were talking about matanai, the word that kept coming into my head was, it was about the intrinsic nature not realized. So that someone had a talent or a gift or something that someone who's a psychologist could probably explain this a lot better than I could, but the potential of that intrinsic nature.
Mhm. Yes, since we have that notion that everything, in a way, even the carrot has a intrinsic nature. There is a meaning why carrot is here in this world. So somehow we feel, I feel sorry for the carrot to be discarded. So I don't know how much but I'm sure you also feel to some extent this. Also, when you have to throw away your old hiking shoes, somebody might feel sorry for the shoes. Oh, I walked with you for many years, I'm sorry, something like that. So yeah, it's not potential. Somehow we already, there's connection there, I think.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Sorry, maybe I don't understand you.
I just heard, again, it was just a fleeting thought that went through my mind, but it was this idea of lost potential or lost contribution when you were talking about that word. So there was the piece about the dress that would be, that's almost like something that's sacred to the family or would have historical value, but the individual who was not achieving his or her goals would, if someone else made a judgment, that would feel like someone was judging that they were not using their full potential or their full gifts or contribution. It's okay. Let's move on. There's plenty of others who have lovely questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. The next question comes from Jerome. Hi, Jerome. Or you're just muted.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry. I was thinking about Native American cultures. In Hopi culture, the language, I think language is a critical separator and facilitator and problem in all of this. In Hopi language, there are no tenses. There's no tense at all, no past, present, or future. So just in common speech, where number one, because there are no tenses, there is a not just a tendency, but I would say an inherent nature of the language requires that whatever is spoken in the form of story. And it comes out that way, even this kind of dialogue that we're having here. And when we talk about story, we're talking about the infusion of eros, what in the West we call eros. And that has to do with the verbal connection, with the fact that oral traditional language, at least in the American Indian languages, are verb dominated, whereas English is noun dominated. And so the infusion of eros is there in story. And in turn, that also links to a cosmological how to put it, container, perhaps, for the story. I'm not sure, Yuriko, I'm sorry, if that's what you're referring to as a kami. But when you were talking about it, that was some of the feeling that I was getting, is the background there that is a source. I can't say more than that. And so I just wanted to make that observation.
Thank you. Yes, feeling. Kami, yeah, kami is very difficult to explain. Yeah, how do I say? It's always, and today I didn't say was also ancestor also in the course of time becoming purified, this soul purified and becoming kami. Yeah, I don't know how to say. Also about my grandmother had a special form of super polite language only used for kami. You don't use that formulation for human. So yes, in the language, there is some feeling in it. Yes. Thank you.
Shantana, you have your hand up. Did you want to comment on this? Or?
Yes. Another lovely remark, Yuriko, you made is about the translation of the notion of nature into Japanese. And I found it absolutely lovely how the translation goes like river, flower, mountain, tree.
Yes.
I'm not repeating it correctly, but so it's like, while on the one hand, there's this abstract notion of nature, culture, and so on, and on the other, there's like a very sensitive, very real, very connected way of representing things. I'm reminded also that in Chinese, the word light is composed of sun and moon.
Yes.
So it's not an abstract notion of light.
Yeah.
That was absolutely lovely, Yuriko. Thank you.
Yeah. That's I think especially ancient Japanese felt this flower, bird, wind, moon. They are so moved by seeing beautiful things in nature. So they really thought, not really thought, I don't know, but it seems they thought, if they don't have a soul, how come my soul is touched? So there is a connection there in the nature from the beginning. It's not the spirit is the matter has a spirit or not. Somehow other way around. I was touched. That means that flower probably has that same nature which I have. So then I think those become beautiful things in nature which move human psyche. Thank you.
Can I just barge in on?
Hi, Andrew.
I have an unfair advantage, but I wanted to tie Shantana's question with Annette's last question about context. Do Japanese listen in a wider context than Westerners? and openness to synchronicity, because Annette's question made me think of this Korean documentary that you've mentioned, where, for example, they gave Westerners and Easterners a camera and asked them to photograph their friend. This is visual context, not auditory context. And the Westerners sort of zoomed right in and photographed their friend. The Easterners had the whole background in as well. They had a much bigger context. So somehow, as Westerners, were less open to synchronicity, because on the one hand, we're very focused on a single subject. On the other hand, we have this abstract notion of nature. And they're both quite useless, actually, for being open to synchronicity. It's that openness to the wider context that is so interesting. And that's where the opportunity may be.
Beautiful, Andrew. You remind me of an image that I often use in I Ching workshops. It's by a Japanese painter, and it's called Reading the I Ching in the Autumn Mountains. You look at the picture and wonder, where's the I Ching and where's the person reading the I Ching? It's there, very small, in one little corner of the picture, with this immense mountain, beautiful mountain with stream and trees and
really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you all for that conversation. It was very interesting. The next question comes from Donna.
Thank you, Yuriko. I'm going to step this out just a little bit, because I think this question line is really fascinating. You mentioned that Japanese and Easterners have the ability to hold more than one worldview in their mind at one time, whereas Westerners tend to have a very focused worldview. And I totally agree. There's lots of management books that have been written about integrated thinking, and Westerners seem to be incapable of it. For my entire career, that has been a topic, and I have seen it so rarely in the West that it's frustrating. It's really disappointing and frustrating that we cannot achieve that. And what it means is we can be empathetic, but when we make a decision, we usually make it from the worldview that we hold. And we aren't interested in, or we are incapable of seeing other worldviews, and we don't see it relationally. So it's becoming a very significant barrier to solving some of the problems that we need to solve. And even during COVID, it's become a barrier. So one of my questions, because I'm obsessed with the idea of polarity, I think it's really compromising our ability to make decisions and make wise decisions. In Japan or in Eastern cultures, do you see the same emphasis on polarized dialogue as we have in the West? Because we're really stuck in it. And it seems to me to have a lot to do with our inability to see from multiple worldviews. Not that there's a right worldview, but our inability to integrate. So I know I'm taking this a little bit out, James. I hope you'll tolerate that. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Interesting question. No, it's really, Japanese are also not good at discussion. Somehow Japanese are pathetic. Can you imagine? We don't speak up. Also, when we Japanese or East, maybe Japanese put in a group, we are very quiet because people really talk and we're thinking. And if I think like this, and but from this other view, how about that? Then I take time, and then maybe next subject already they are talking about. So it's not only shy. It's more like slow if you go around. So I'm not yet familiar with Bohm's dialogue, but probably this is Bohm's dialogue probably take enough time to really allow this time to really, I don't know, assimilate seeing things from many different view. I think. But this polarizing thing is interesting. The same Jungian analyst analyzed Japanese creation myth, and he pointed out, and I think many think it's right, the always interesting triad comes, and the mythology always many triads from the very first deities on, and the mythology talk about this and this, but the most important middle one, we only know the name, but they don't describe anything about this central deity, kami, central kami. Always we know about this kami, but we have in the mythology, we don't know this central kami. So then the Kawaii's idea is the hollow structure of Japanese psyche or Japanese mythology by taking this empty seat, important center is empty. That in that way we balance. That is, I thought, is interesting idea, and also in Japanese society, this is pros and cons. When we respect this hollow center, and it's really good, it works. But sometimes this hollow center, if it's literally hollow, it's hollow, it's, of course, it's danger, but also there could be irresponsibility, since nobody is taking responsibility, nobody taking this one central leadership. But so there's a pros and cons, but I thought this hollow center is one idea, I think. But it's an interesting question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Donna. Next question. I don't see. Oh, Roderick, hi, come on in.
Thank you very much, Yuriko, for a very fascinating talk, and I particularly liked everything that you said about motainai and so on, the way you unpicked that notion, and lots of the other things you said about interdependent origination and so on. I thought there was one moment where I thought you were talking about time in the Japanese context, and that's when you mentioned about ichigo ichie, one lifetime, one meeting, which as you were describing it, seemed to me to suggest a sort of a state of consciousness where you were not thinking about the future or the past. You're not bringing your past memory of that person, and you're not thinking about what you're going to do next with that person. You're meeting them in the present, and each time you meet them, you're meeting them sort of in the present. So in a sense, that's a sort of a particular quality of time, which is really focusing on the present. So I felt that you'd really had communicated something about time. Just going back to the earlier question about that. The other thing I just wanted to say is that, I really, I found that what you've said about the Huayan Buddhism very fascinating. The way you sort of detailed those connections. There's so much that one could think about that. But the general idea of this sort of interconnectedness and sense of wholeness sort of highlights one of the ways in which Jung talked about synchronicity, but it's not often highlighted so much. I mean, he talks about it as a form of thinking in terms of the whole. I mean, specifically when he's talking about in relation to the I Ching, he talks about synchronicity as thinking in terms of the whole. And in another context, he even said that that the understanding of synchronicity is the key which unlocks the door to the Eastern apperception of totality that we in the West, I suppose he's talking about, find so mysterious. That synchronicity is in a sense a key to understanding the kind of consciousness that you've been describing for us. So I'll just mention these as a couple of things that I found particularly interesting and rich in your talk. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, that time question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't aware Yes, I think you are right. This really here and now is very much so in Japan. And of course, I think again, it's psyche is pretty, not pretty, it's very much connected with the nature, and the Japanese nature is always changing. So this is really seeped into Japanese experience. I think that's really, I don't know how many years, this ever-changing nature really formed, molded Japanese psyche and a notion of time, probably. Thank you. And this wholeness, yes, I didn't, yeah, while somehow preparing this presentation, become more and more somehow understanding synchronicity, because I was before not so. This notion of wholeness and synchronicity, just I started to have a glimpse, but I think it's important, because when we thought synchronicity, we always focus on these events and observe on things. So we somehow, I tend to think of this, but you are right. It's interesting. Jung already noticed this connection to wholeness, synchronicity. Yeah, thank you.
Well, actually, as I have you both, Yuriko and Roderick. Well, Roderick, yesterday you talked about sure synchronicity, but sort of in the mission of re-enchanting the world. And today, Yuriko, you've talked about Japanese culture and how they sort of have this animated world. Do you two find any similarities or differences between what you two have talked about this weekend? If any.
I think many people find difficult to think the rock has a spirit, or yeah, mountains, this inanimate object has spirit. But when we have this view, there is, it's, maybe we have to go into this animated world from not the maybe Western point of view, but if we really take this whole wider view, then phenomena isn't just a thing. Then in this way, world is animated. I like that Andrew was saying that yesterday's Roderick's presentation, Roderick, you used the de-animation of the world, the animation of the nature. So that means first, the beginning was the animated. So it's not the, is it animated or not? That's not, it's just really, yeah, that's my feeling. But I don't know how Roderick can answer this.
Well, I don't know if I can, but I did find very, very interesting what you were saying actually about nature and how, and the difficulty that that people in Japan had translating the concept of nature, because nature, as it were, by the time that they were trying to translate it, had come to mean something very disenchanted in Western discourse. I mean, I think that's a very interesting point. And it did make me think of a question which I had for you actually, which was, to what extent do you think? I mean, we talk about sort of de-animation, but also, and more commonly, disenchantment, and this sort of whole discourse of the disenchantment of the world, and that's been very much related to the rise of sort of science and a sort of more rationalistic culture and so And in the Western context, that seems to go very deep, that disenchantment. I wonder in Japan, where you say this sort of world of the kami, even amongst sort of modernized Japanese, is still there just below the surface. I wonder what you would say about the sort of quality of disenchantment in Japanese culture. Do you think it is a less thoroughgoing disenchantment than we experience in Europe, for example? Or do you think it's qualitatively different, or is there anything you could say about that?
I think disenchantment, in a way, only the surface, especially after the war, the emperor Tenno is no longer kami. He was a living god. then and after the war, he declared, "I'm not God." So in this way, it seems in my father's generation, he was a child 6 when the war was in, no, teenager, I think, at the end of the war. Those generation really went through the really difficult disenchantment, I think. But even those generation, now I don't want to talk about religion or just they discard it, but those people had a very suppressed layer and they are still keeping it. So this in Japan, compared to the Western culture, we still keep a lot of that sense of kami. I have many examples if we have time, but yes, that's my answer.
Thank you for that, Roderick. Yuriko, are you happy to take one more question?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Alan, come on in.
Well, thank you for the 2 talks, brilliant talks over the weekend. This just followed on, James, from your question. It suddenly occurred to me that Shakespeare's Tempest seems to bring together the 2 talks over the weekend. We have this enchanted island, we have all the synchronicity, a magical environment, and in terms of the play itself, like so much of Shakespeare, operates at many levels. And if we take Prospero's journey, we see, I think, it being the lessening of his ego in terms of the transformation that takes place during the play. And one of the very strange things I think about Shakespeare, and I certainly experienced this, I remember in the cinema once, Much Ado About Nothing. And really quite a lot of it I didn't understand. But the experience in terms of coming out the cinema, I'm sure in common with many others, was just to be happy. And I just somehow wonder if it isn't the language and the many levels of Shakespeare that does have this effect of lessening our egocentricity, because the ego doesn't understand all of it and can't actually sort of grapple with it. I seem to think it has that effect, the language operating at many levels. And I don't know if that's, again, I know really nothing about Zen, but that seems to be in that area. So I guess I just wonder if are there Shakespeare equivalents in Japan, or am I thinking along the right lines?
Interesting question. Sorry, if I understand correctly, the Shakespeare's when they come out from this Shakespeare theater, how do they feel? They said more happy?
Well, I certainly did. I was amazed, really, because there's lots of it I didn't follow, because I think sometimes with Shakespeare you have to sort of study the play beforehand because it's very difficult to grasp the language. But nevertheless, there's something about it, the language, the rhythm, the fact that undoubtedly the story works at many different levels. And I think The Tempest, I think his final play is truly astonishing in its depth and brilliance. But I think that's I just think somehow the language overcomes the drawbacks with English and the Western ego, in the sense it loosens up all this fixedness. If that's one of the problems in the West, and a consequence of that, I think, is for people to become happy.
Interesting. I don't know. I'm not in the position of thinking about equivalent of Shakespeare. I don't have so much knowledge about Shakespeare, but it's opposite example in Japan. There was a famous film director Ozu, and again, this is a Jungian analyst Kawai talked about. When he was a student, he went to Ozu's film with his American friend, and he was really moved by this film, and like really feeling deep into film, and came out. But then American friend was very frustrated. Even the story didn't finish, and why film finished? so maybe in this way, probably you are right. It's not just a storyline. There are many elements in this, narrative or those piece of theater work or film. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there are many senses. Yeah, then you get something. So maybe you get something which Shakespeare put invisible.
Yes, I'm sure. Visible, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Alan. Now we have gone a little bit over, so I guess we should close this session. Yuriko, do you have any closing words for us?
Yes, thank you very much. It was really great opportunity for me to talk about. At the beginning, when you invited me, I thought I'm not the expert of synchronicity. I'm just a Jungian analyst. Of course, Jungian should be able to say something about synchronicity, but certainly compared to the other presenter, I'm not expert of synchronicity. But given this opportunity, I was really grateful. And also today, all of you are there, and we somehow could communicate, and it's great for me to know it's not just about the Japanese and Japanese worldview. Somehow I could feel the resonance from you. So I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for all of you.
Well, thank you, Yuriko. You definitely added some great value to this synchronicity event. So thank you again. Shantana, do you have any closing words to say?
Certainly. Yuriko, thank you very much for what you conveyed, and also for the way you conveyed it. It's like you were like embodying that transmission. I'm reminded of an image you showed, the one which has a sphere, and the subconscious part and the conscious part. And in the Western version, the conscious part is centered around the ego. In the Eastern sphere, the arrow is connected to the center, but there is no specific identified ego at the center of the conscious mind. I think you convey that, you communicate that with your own talk. So thank you very much, Yuriko.
Thank you, Shantana. Thank you, Yuriko, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been a great session. Before we go, I'd just like to remind everyone of the updates I gave yesterday. There's nothing much new. First of all, regarding Sutra. So yesterday we received a request to get some of the slides out of the presentations. We have reached out to some of the presenters and some have said yes. So this week these slides should appear on Sutra. So keep an eye out for those. Secondly, I'd also like to remind everyone that after the great response and interest into next week's sessions, the ones that will focus on the I Ching, we will be adding an additional session to make sure that we read through all of your histograms from the I Chi process. This session will be on Thursday the 4th of March at the same time as usual, so at either 6 p.m. Central Time or 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be sending out an email this week with more information on this session and also to make sure that our scheduling fits your availability. So look out for this email. And yes, I hope to see you all next week for this event, which will be with Shantina Sabadini, who's here with us, and Cruz Manya Sabadini. As always, you can, for anything, you can contact us either via the website on the contact us section or just send us an email directly at james@partycenter.com to contact me, or eleanor@partycenter.com to contact Eleanor, or even on Sutra, you can direct message there. And yes, that's it. Thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you again soon here at the Party Center. Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Good